there was another fantastic find that was released about 10 hours ago. Geologists found 19 million tons of lithium deposits in the U.S. So tell me if that's around Asheville, North Carolina, and then we'll have a little bit of a story on our hands there, huh?
I knew you were waiting. You were looking me dead in the eyes.
Yes,
on that
I
one.
was. I was waiting for a response there.
Well, the only thing that I was going to say on the top of the hour before we just dive right in is basically, I mean, everyone knows about what's going on right now. We got Trump and Elon butting heads with each other.
Yeah.
And I know there's a bunch of, stuff behind it going on, all over the social media and the internets. Well, all I can say is
camera.
Oh, well. I mean, we're just along for the show. We're always watching a theater. That's all it ever is, man.
Pretty much. And one more touch note. I've been listening to the new Lil Wayne album, and I want to file a class action lawsuit against him because, good Lord, that album is awful. It is an assault to my ears and to my brain.
Lil Wayne, is that what you said?
Yes.
I have a question before we pivot from the big, huge. I'm gonna tell you, like, if that was a psychological operation yesterday, I got to give them mad props because I was dumbfounded. I did not know what to think. I mean, when I thought I knew, and then it was like another monkey wrench. Like, well, wait a minute. But now, after like a whole day of letting it all calibrate. It seems to me they want to create a one-party system. That one-party system, obviously the American Party. And I commented under his post today, and I was like, wait a minute. Because as like the comments started coming in after I commented, I was like, oh, this is interesting. So if you think about it, it's kind of like collapsing and consolidating of sorts. I don't know what you guys think, but I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, absolutely. And those of you who are listening in the video space and on demand in the podcast world, that's our friend Maze. She's joining us. We're doing a little thing different today. We're doing sort of like a, what would you call this? Like a town hall sort of discussion?
Yeah.
Kind of like a collab.
It's like a live collab all at once.
Absolutely. So every now and again, she's going to chime in. We're going to have people voice their opinions. It's going to be a question and answer sort of concept going on through the entire show. So it's going to be a little back and forth throughout. So it's going to be a little different than everyone's used to. So bear with us.
Yeah.
Be a fun one.
But with that being said, I had to at least bring up the whole Trump and Elon thing because I find it all wildly entertaining in that regard. But let's get into it. I just want to jump right in because right now, just to kick it all off, I want to take everyone to the beginning of cognitive warfare. Now, cognitive warfare obviously is, you can trace it back technically thousands of years. I mean, they were doing this in, back when they were throwing spears at each other. However, basically starting around the 30s, basically the late 30s, that's where there was a huge like paradigm shift because of technology, really.
Yeah.
And learning new things and the things that were discovered, especially it all really kicked off in World War II. That Operation Paperclip there was things within that, if you don't know what Operation Paperclip is, to anyone listening, it's basically where we went and got all these scientists. And they were kind of divvied up across many countries, but the CIA got their little tidbits in there and they're like, give us some of that. And so it all kind of started there because they took research that the Nazis were doing on psychology. Because if people don't know this, the Nazis were way ahead in a lot of things at that time. So a lot of the experiments they did on the psychological side, they were like, ooh, we're interested in that. Wait, you made people subservient? Because the Nazis were successful at making people cognitively dimmed down through their more archaic methods back then. But with that being said, skip up a little bit and jump into, let's say, MK Ultra.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Well, now we're not going to be going through everything on MK Ultra. Just because if you want a whole deep dive on MK Ultra, we actually have a full episode on that. Anyone who's tuning in, you can find it on Spotify, YouTube, all that fun stuff. Apple Podcasts, it's there. And it's like a 2.5 hour episode or something?
Yeah, it's about 2.5 hours of a deep dive where we go over CIA documents and the whole lot.
Testimonies.
We've had plenty of guests on as well throughout the time of our show where people have had experiences with the CIA through the GATE project, and we've become pretty well versed in that as well. So frequencies have become a really big talking point to us. We have actually been DCA'd by DARPA. They took down one of our episodes related to a Neuralink and a injection, if you will.
An injection, yeah.
That it's a vaccine that they would give you to change your memories. And it started off as a research project dedicated specifically for people who lose their limbs. May it be for diabetes, losing it, or through surgery or through accidents. They made it to where you can feel your arm again. And if you had a robotic arm, you can then move that robotic arm around. But they learned that they can manipulate your brain and manipulate how you remember. So they can add memories to it and take them away as they will and as they want, whenever they want.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that?
Oh, I do.
Oh, it's crazy.
Oh, it's insane.
That thing still haunts my dreams, thinking about that vaccine that was created specifically.
And I have a whole thing on DARPA that I'm not gonna get into it now.
Yeah.
But that just
Little
because
teaser,
it's
right?
a little
Little
teaser.
teaser,
Yeah, the teaser. However, I do want to set the stage right on the history for like MK Ultra and all that stuff. So
Camera.
obviously we are talking about MK Ultra now briefly. Well, if you aren't aware of this, MK Ultra, the only reason it was able to exist was due to the research and work that was done in Project Pandora.
Yes.
If you're unfamiliar with Project Pandora, it takes place in the Cold War, and it was all about an embassy in Moscow, and basically they were using microwave frequencies pointed at the embassy from everywhere. And it was really, that part was to activate basically like a microphone that they had in there so they could hear what was being talked about. So that project, which, Project Pandora, there's a lot more to it than just that, but that is what opened doors, because they did a bunch of research and experiments, and they're like, what else can we use this for? Because that is actually where the first microwave gun came from.
Yeah, and they during Project Pandora, correct me if I'm wrong, they figured out that the radio frequency that they shot into the CIA embassy caused panic. It made them disperse locations.
Yeah.
There was a prime example of that being used in Turkey during the riots a few months back. I think it was, February-ish, where they were rioting in the streets about the politician, about their president being corrupt, and they shot a radio frequency into the masses, and it made them disperse. Which then causes the Havana syndrome, which is a whole nother frequency-based neurological warfare that they're using against you today.
Yeah, you're going to end up hearing us mention things, and it's the random things we talk about, like Havana syndrome, the event that happened in Turkey, MK Ultra, Project Pandora. These are all big names that they all could be their own, literally 2-hour sit down, 3-hour sit down, or multiple episode subject. Like, there's so much to flesh out. It
typically happens. We just bring it up over and over again, right? The concept of what's happening.
Yeah. And so moving on from that, though, just to kind of give a tidbit on MK Ultra. So it got initiated in the early 1950s under CIA Director Allen Dulles. It primarily was done through the Office of Scientific Intelligence, and then later the Technical Services staff. So, and the whole point of MK Ultra was to basically develop methods of behavioral engineering through drugs, psychological torture, and sensory manipulation. Which, hilariously, which also not actually hilarious, that is everything we're exposed to right now at the highest it's ever been. Because you walk around with a phone in your pocket where you're constantly stuffing your face into it, which causes a lot of sensory manipulation through your eyes, ears, sensations, the works. Because I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but if you guys have ever felt like that ghost vibrate on your phone, you think you got a text and you go and grab your phone and look, and there's no text, there's no notification, nothing, but you're like, no, that was a distinct vibrate. I know it happened.
Or or it's not even in your pocket, and your body senses a vibration in the spot where your phone is always at.
100%.
I know what happens to me on a regular basis. I'll just leave my phone on my desk, and I see my phone, and then it vibrates in my pocket.
Yeah.
That is a pure design that your body is being manipulated to believe something, right?
Yeah. And a lot of people don't mention this fact about MK Ultra. The MK stands for mind control,
Simple.
but control with a K, because it's still, they deliberately did it because that is the Germanic spelling.
I thought it was because it's cooler that way. Like
It's
you,
way
you
cooler,
spell
dude.
school with a K, right? SKOOL.
There's too many MC hammers running around. They're like, we can't do MC. We can't do the MC. But basically, Ultra was a reference to the code breaking project of World War II, which is, that should just symbolize how high level of secrecy they had going with it. So all, like I said, it's all about drugs and psychological torture and sensory manipulation. Now, the core techniques of that were LSD experiments, obviously sensory deprivation, and then electroshock and, well, hypnosis. So I'll call back again to the vibration you get in your pocket.
Yeah.
That's a shock. That's all it is. The shock is what's being generated in the phone to kick everything off. Because remember what your phone operates off: electricity. And there is no, I'm sorry, but there is, after all the research I've done on this for years, there is no mistaken. This is just the most advanced form. They realized, hey, we don't have to do shock therapy on people. What if there's a way we can take all this tech that we have created and then converge it into one unit, which is the phone you have in your pocket? Where what do? You doom scroll? People stuck looking at their damn phones all the time. And then also at the same time, the moment you put that thing down, you get a little zap. You get a little vibration. Oh, I got to check my phone. I got to go look at it again. Even though you didn't get a notification, well, now you're back on your phone. Next thing you know, you're doom scrolling again, or looking up this, or playing some stupid game on your phone to keep you subservient and basically wearing blinders.
Keeping you occupied, right?
Mm-hmm. And so, I will say this. So let's talk about a declassified memo excerpt from 1954. It says this, quote, "It is desirable to investigate whether an individual can be made to perform an act of attempted assassination involuntary after being subjected to a hypnotic state." That is from one of the declassified documents that did survive, because they tried to burn everything in the 80s. I think it was like, what, 1981 or 1982 or something like that. And two notable victims, and we're going to move on from
that.
Yeah. Two notable victims of this whole of MK Ultra is Frank Olson. He's the CIA biochemist, unknowingly dosed. He was not aware that he was dosed with LEDs. Damn, dude, he's bright. No, unknowingly dosed with LSD. He later died under basically suspicious circumstances. They say it's officially suicide, but they found all this shit that was pumped into him, and there's things wrong with his blood, the works. And then this is kind of an umbrella lotting of victims, but unknowing citizens of the United States. So a lot of them were prostitutes. That we found that, there is information on that. A lot of them were prostitutes. And they were used to lure victims into San Francisco and New York for this surreptitious type dosing, essentially, which is also under Project Midnight Climax. Like I said, there's another project I just name dumped, and that's another big one, and they're all interconnected. So
what's the overreaching goal here? What are they trying to attempt to do here? They do all these studies and all these tests to see what effects can happen. You briefly mentioned that they did it under hypnosis to then trigger people to then go and commit murder, assassins.
And I can add here too, if whenever you're done.
Go ahead. No. Either some of your ad.
Yeah. So basically, how publicly they made it seem like MK Ultra has been shut down, and that a lot of the documents were destroyed and whatnot. But it is able to activate certain compartmentalizations of personality types that they create, and so what will happen is, like, you'll create a mental almost this like a cavity, like an area where you would embody another type of personality, and it's through usually some
Hmm.
sort of kind of mental torture or deprivation. But so it's evolved though, and I think the research and the methods still continued. It's evolved into psychological operations. That's one of them. Behavioral economics.
Hmm.
I mean, if you guys think about what X is doing, like first it was all about free speech. Everybody come here, free speech. Next thing you know, they began to do the ad revenue, right? And they introduced money to the situation. And then what did that do? That began to kind of reward you to be for being aligned with, I guess, whatever ideologies or certain, like, it just, you would be it's a reward and punishment type of thing for those who cared about money. And they kept saying, you're the new media. Then there's narrative engineering, emotion driven AI training.
Hmm.
Also did, and I have a lot on that I can present later. Digital behavior modification, immersive simulation, and there's a lot of the VR experiments with military and civilian, and then also transmedia. This is like more of the group behavior shaping. And so
Hmm.
yeah, that's pretty much how it's evolved. So it hasn't gone away. It's still here, and we can talk about those things and how to be aware of them. There's patterns everywhere, guys, and this is why we
Yeah.
talk about it. When you talk about stuff so much, you begin to notice these things, and you can help protect yourself.
Well, I've got something to play into what you just said because you talked about, which was actually my next piece
Camera.
in the history aspect. So you were talking about groupthink and like people kind of assimilating them, being assimilated into these different things. Well, there's also the thing I'm sure plenty of people have heard of, which is the Stanford prison experiment that happened in 1971. And I know you know about that.
Of course.
But if you don't know who it was, so Dr. Philip Zimbardo is the one who is the researcher on that. He's the one who was running the show. And the objective of it was to observe the psychological effects of perceived power dynamics between prisoners and guards. So we're talking everyone just played a role. It was just random citizens who signed up. They thought it was like a innocent experiment, and it went horribly wrong because the people who were playing the role of guards actually ended up taking it seriously and did a bunch of messed up things to people. And it was this huge cataclysmic event is what it turned into. So the guards became abusive, prisoners became fully submissive. At first they weren't, because they're like, dude, knock it off. There's documentaries on this thing. So if anyone has, if you've never actually dove into or really don't know anything above the surface value of the name of the Stanford prison experiment, I implore you to please go and watch like a documentary on it, because
Yeah,
there's
it's similar.
many of them
It's
out
similar to the Stockholm syndrome effect, but
there. Mm-hmm.
on a much more psychological effort.
Yep. And also, don't forget about the next one over would be Milgram's obedience study. You ever heard of that?
Maze, you have your hand raised still, or are you just stuck like that?
Is it showing that it's raised?
Yeah,
Stuff
yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
Okay.
Sorry.
You're
No,
good.
you're good. Milgram's obedience study, that was in 1961. And, it was done by Dr. Stanley Milgram, I believe it was. Hence the name Milgram's obedience study. So basically, the whole point of it was to measure the willingness to obey authority figures, even when it meant harming others. Like,
This is a good one.
yeah. And basically, the setup, just to kind of paint the picture correctly, basically, the participants believed they were administering increasingly intense electric shocks to a quote unquote learner. And then it ended up resulting in 65% of participants administered the highest shock, even as the learner screamed or fell silent because it was too much pain overload because they were being shocked the hell out of. And there is a lot of relevance to this within like military psychology. Basically, it validated that the average individuals could be conditioned to override empathy under authoritative command. Basically, you're going to become a lapdog and do what we tell you to do.
Yeah, it sounds like
Plain and
a
simple.
Jason Bourne concept, right? Where they train you how to not necessarily attack and fight, but how to disobey and then go from there.
Yeah.
And then you do as you're told.
Yeah.
God, it makes me really hate our government sometimes, which
I hate them all the
yeah,
time.
most of the time, I suppose.
Yeah, no
I
shit.
mean, we briefly talked about the Elon and Trump thing going on and the one party concept in its entirety, right? That is just another strict example of hate the government. Like, don't trust your authorities, don't trust them, which is a good thing. You should always be questioning what's going on around you, right?
Yep.
That's why we're here today, to sort of bring light to the concept of don't trust everything that you hear going on.
Yeah.
I see that Yote has his hand up in the chat. I don't know if he wants to say anything.
And Marat, you have a hot mic too.
No,
Sorry,
I
I
was
was,
just
I was
gonna,
just going to come in about something on the Milgram experiment. Yo, go ahead, and then I'll speak.
yeah, I was just gonna say, like, the Charles Manson. Everybody hears about the Charles Manson now. It's kind of time. What do these have any? Is there any studies on him that made this happen? Does anybody know the story about that?
Yeah.
Why did
It's a good
Charles
question.
Manson do what he did?
Yeah, there actually is.
Yeah, there's lots of studies on him.
Yeah, in fact, it is a common consensus among the investigators that he was actually an MK Ultra victim. That is something that many, like, it only takes 5 minutes of some Google searching, and even Google gives you that answer. I mean, you could go to DuckDuckGo or any of these other browsers you want, or search engines you want. But the thing is that the common consensus among the investigators was that Charles Manson, they are all inclined to believe that he was put through essentially MK Ultra. Now, there's no definitive proof, and they all state that because, like we said earlier, they were, actually, I don't know if we did say it.
I don't think we
MK
have.
Ultra, that was like no one was supposed to know about it. In fact, a lot of sections, like top secret areas of the government and different branches, had no idea it even existed. And so when it started getting found out that it did, they were ordered, basically the guy who ran it was like, we have to burn everything. And so they tried to burn pretty much all the documentation they could. That's why the victims that they did it to typically were nobodies.
But Charles Manson is a perfect example of a failed experiment. They wanted this guy to work for them to find people who are easily manipulated. But he took them for himself and did what he wanted to do.
Yep.
He took the masses in his own right and then just manipulated them to the fullest. And that is what these people are trained to do, right? So you can look at all the news outlets that go across the world who spew the same exact nonsense and say the same things. It's the same exact usage of MK Ultra in a modern day setting. Mays briefly mentioned that it's still going on. It just changed names, right? So with that in mind, you'll see all these big famous people who are trying to get you to, I don't know, buy their supplements. That's another form of it. So to stay on your toes. I don't know what to tell you in that regard.
Yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Who else had their hand up? They wanted to speak.
I was going to say on Milgram real quick. One of the the post analysis I remember for the like a theory of obedience that they had there was that the idea is in any given person, unless they're an expert or they have particular expertise in what they're doing, they'll typically defer to the group or to the hierarchy if they're asked to do something, and so that is a way that they're able to outsource their guilt in a sense. And the other version of it is that like you essentially see yourself as an agent working on behalf of someone else, and so you're not actually the source of the action, and so that also just assists in outsourcing your guilt.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a manager pushing off the work to somebody else, right? That's the concept in a nutshell.
Yeah, and just to add in a little fun fact about the Milgram experiment, just so since he brought it up, or sorry, the Milgram's obedience study, I missaid that. Basically, one thing to note is that both researchers within that had funding, like direct funding connections to military and intelligence, kind of like adjacent institutions. So they were getting, the people running this thing were getting basically unlimited dough to do whatever they want. So that's another thing to kind of add in. Now that's a whole other rabbit hole because it opens up a different door and it will bring a different perspective of how to research the Milgram's obedience study. Because, you know, I'm sure everyone's heard this before. You follow the money, follow it. It takes you right to more worse shit every time. Like I would say, oh, it brings you to the source. It brings you to one of the sources, and then it's just more effed up stuff going forward. And it's just next thing you know, you're not just at a Y in the road. You're at a spider web. The road turned into a spider web. It's like, man, I do not know which way to go.
And I mean that
You
also
know.
brings up the concept of the neurological links, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they have come up with all these ways to manipulate you. They used LSD, they use sound, they use frequencies, and now they're moving on to technology more and more. They are using the Neuralink that Elon Musk and his team are trying to put into your
Mm-hmm.
brains that will then just make you a hive mind mentality. I know there's a few individuals who have already taken this technology and put it into their brain.
Well,
I see the usage for the paraplegic or the quadriplegic,
yeah, I'm glad you brought this
but I
up.
don't see the necessity in it for the lay person or the everyday individual who isn't handicapped or in that regard.
Before we get into the DARPA side of things and Neuralink and like
Absolutely, I
all
see.
that stuff, I see that Yote has his hand up. Did
And
he have anything?
Mr. Kaplan does too.
Yes, please, Maze. Choose whoever was first.
Yeah.
Oh, mine had went down. I'm sorry. I guess it's glitching today. Thank you though.
No, you're good. Was there another?
And yes, Mr. Kaplan, your hand is up. Go ahead and chime in, and then I have a little bit after him. Go ahead.
Just first and foremost, I wanted to make sure Coyote knows that I love him dearly and that I didn't mean to neglect him. And smartly, you might have covered this. I came into the space late. Did you cover the Wormwood documentary already?
No,
No, we haven't.
please.
Um, okay. So it's a miniature series that, and I don't know. I have no way of knowing the army's actual intent. And I believe it was in Fort Detrick, Maryland, where the army had a bunch of people sign up for like a super secret mission. Well, it ended up being that the army allegedly wanted to make a munition, like a smoke bomb that could release a chemical that could incapacitate enemy combatants. And so what they did is they dosed actual army soldiers with varying levels of LSD. And like I believe one of them ended up committing suicide. And so what went along with it is they all I think this happened in like maybe 46 or something. 46, 64, somewhere in there.
It was in the. It looked like it was somewhere around in the early 1950s. Like I think it was like 1952.
So yeah,
or
he's close.
53.
1946.
Yeah, you're
1953.
basically right on the money.
Well, the participants involved all had an NDA that was essentially like, if you talk about anything here within the next 50 years, you're going to be charged with treason. And so
50
since
years. That's a long time.
50 years, and since then, some of the guys have come forward and done interviews, and they've talked about the shit that happened, and it is absolutely mind blowing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another Frank Olson experiment before his mysterious death of whenever he jumped out of a window to commit suicide. I guess, can we say that on the air these days? I don't know.
Sewer sliding,
But
dude.
that's right around the time when, because I know that Frank Olson, the like head honcho of the Wormwood conspiracy and the idea around MK Ultra, jumped out of a window. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and
yeah.
smartly, and you may have covered this already, but like he legit like burned all of his files prior to his untimely death.
Yeah, we talked about that as well because MK Ultra was not supposed to be known, so he went through and tried to burn all of his documents. There was only a few that remained that were able to be found and talked about, which I don't know about you, speaks kind of volumes toward our government and the idea that they are trying their best to control your brain. Maze, what did you want to say?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because when we're talking about like the hive mind, and understanding that how our brain works, and it holds an internal generative model. It's a prediction machine. That's what our brain is constantly doing. It's predicting. It predicts incoming sensory input, and compares it to like the actual input. And if the input matches in prediction, then it's all good. You know what I mean? There's low energy cost. And
Mhm.
if it mismatches, there's a prediction error, then it'll have to either A, update the model, suppress or ignore it. And usually it does that unless it's like something that really needs to be, like, for instance, if you're walking, you're not thinking about it, but like your movement is very fluid because you expect there to be ground right under you as you walk. But let's just say there's like a pothole or something that you didn't, it wasn't input in your brain, and like that jolt where you're like, oh my god, like that
Yes.
was very uncertain. Well, that's the type of, like, so our brain's constantly taking in all of this information around us. And so this specific model, I've been bringing it up for a while, and I just didn't know how to talk about it because it used to like fly over people's head. But and I was trying to explain that this is what's being used in AI right now, and it's also what's being used to create these environments for that type of hive mind. When we talk about smart cities, it's very much so involved in the creation of what that's going to be. So like these, for instance, the let me see, I have it right here. So basically the smart cities and them being all very connected, it's beyond, it's like an engineered participatory environment where collective behavior is what minimizes surprise in a controlled way. Does that make sense? Like, so
Mhm.
this is kind of what they're trying to build in these like clusters of smart cities that would have like these digital twins, and they would run simulations to be able to predict, how this cluster is going to be moving. And it's crazy, like that they actually study bacteria. Do you guys know that they study bacteria to see how bacteria naturally functions? And then it is applying it to humans, and scaling it and like applying it in that way. I just wanted to add that. I thought that was
Yeah,
interesting.
thank you for adding that. There's a lot of things that we do naturally that we don't think about, right?
Yeah.
Blinking, breathing, chewing your food, that they want to not even think about. So what else is going to be put in front of you that you don't notice?
Mm-hmm. Oh, look, a
You,
flashy new car. The new model's out.
absolutely,
Oh,
a
let's
new
go.
phone. Let's go
Let's
buy
go
that
put
phone.
ourselves in more debt for it, even though we know at the back of our head we can't afford it.
Oh, new shoes
But
that just came out. Let's spend all of our money on that real quick. Let's not put our money into investments to better our lives and our family.
oh, you
Let's keep
mean
it.
one news channel that I follow all
That's
of a sudden told me that this guy's a bad politician, or this company's bad, or this person murdered this person, when really they're only showing, yeah. It just there are so many
I
examples
mean,
of different
there's a
things.
prime example that I always go to is breaking up the family, right? So back about 100 years ago, maybe even more, 150, families would stick together until they were married, and even then, their children would stay with them. Typically, the male would marry his spouse, and then the spouse would move in with his parents, and they would stick together on their land,
Mm-hmm.
gardening, take care of it, and keeping all of the money within the family. Now they have you all breaking the family up, so your money is spread out. So you're buying more groceries, more clothes, more belongings, paying more bills into gasoline and all these things, right?
Because what at the end of the day, just to add to that, before I bring us back to Neuralink,
Got some more hands
oh,
raised.
I know there's a lot of hands,
There's
but
only two.
oh, there we go.
But go ahead.
But just to add to that, you know, when they're breaking up the
Camera.
family model and doing all that fun stuff, well, one of the other things that comes with it is, what do you get from that? If you wanted to divide something and you wanted to make it to where they're weaker, well, you get rid of their support. If everyone's having to be on their own, like, don't get me wrong, everyone can be independent. Now, this is going into psychology. I've read a lot on psychology. In fact, I own a tiny library in my closet, essentially, which is all the stuff they teach in the colleges.
Should
And
put them up next to you over
I know
there.
I need to put them up on display. But basically, what they end up doing, what I think is the reason for it, because it fits into the psychological aspect, is that they push this narrative of you have to be independent. Go on, spread your wings, get out, go, go, go. be out when you're 18, be out when you're 19, go off to college, go get assimilated into a place where they're going to tell you how things really are. And whenever you leave and you fall into this system, well, then all of a sudden, what happens? You pretty much lose your support group. Now you do not have that foundation that was already around you. Now you don't have a foundation. You're on your own. And it makes the person who goes on and bees on their own, to me, basically it's like 100 times more susceptible to manipulation. How many people do you know of that go off to college and now they're woke? Now
Well,
they're like, oh, I'm enlightened. I went to college. I got told this and it's true because that person has professor in front of their name.
Yep.
It must be true. And they turn on their own families. We see this all the time, everywhere. And so, like, that is one aspect. I wanted to add that.
Yeah. Can I add to that?
Please,
Oh,
yeah,
sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say they
Well, I
keep
was
you
just gonna
in a
say.
fight
Well,
or
you go.
flight mentality so that you are easily manipulated. The more you fear, the more you are scared, the more they want you to be able to listen. Camera, Ben. Go ahead, Maze.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is that and I'm going to say this in a hopefully comical, you guys will find it funny, but I'm like a victim of the feminism movement, right? Like I had no idea. I went to college. I'm like, okay, I'm supposed to go out there and be successful. Like first, that's kind of the mindset that we have as we go off into school with at a very young age, but then you like your goals are set for you. Success looks a certain way for you to fit into society. And so what happened was is that like, okay, in order for me to be as great as I'm going to be in the corporate world, it is it's like your family just, that idea is in the back of my mind. And it was, it wasn't a priority. Whereas before, culture growing up, it is a priority. Women are kind of raised to be and fit into a certain role and be a good wife. And so you see it happening in all fronts. Like it is baked into education, it's baked into the conditioning. And so we're seeing it, on all levels. And when I say I'm a victim of it, it's meaning like I didn't realize how much of these woke ideologies are baked in because it's kind of weaponizing your compassion or empathy to a degree to make you feel like society should feel this way, but we don't cognate, like it's not in the frontal what do you call it, the prefrontal cortex. It
Correct.
happens under the subconscious processing.
Yeah, and so the prefrontal cortex is a huge proponent to needing you to be able to think for yourselves. The camera's on you, Ben. And then if you're able to battle that and go past it, then you're able to grow and really see what the world is happening around you. They provide food that hardens your prefrontal cortex so that you cannot begin to think for yourself. Think canola oil, think vegetable oil. These things are meant and designed to harden your prefrontal cortex so that by the time you're 35 years old or so, then you are just a subservient beast to the machine.
Mm-hmm.
So eat healthy, exercise, take care of yourself.
And the only thing I wanted to add to that, Maze, was that, how you course correct him and said you weren't a victim. Technically, you are, because if you're being manipulated and that person knows that they are easily able to make you susceptible to something, well, then, that's being a victim of manipulation. So, and, in all all perspective, shit. Yeah. That's being a victim by definition.
I was a
would say
victim
so.
of that liberal mentality whenever I was a young man in college too. And then I got out of college and realized it was all a bunch of bullshit. And realizing that they were just trying to keep me a little soy boy, sensitive little bitch. And then
Well, I think there's a
That's so
question of
funny.
like whether it captures you as an individual or whether it captures society abroad and the effects of it, like in a general sense. I mean, we as individuals can like step out of it, but I think what Maze is talking about is the way it affects women broadly and in trends and like fertility rates and stuff like that.
yeah,
And would you
yeah,
agree? Would
absolutely.
you agree now? Sorry to interject, but that the more so problem that I'm seeing, yes, you got the woke minded left or whatever, but is the rhinos. The rhinos are a bigger issue in my neck of the woods than any of this because that's where I'm seeing Marxism at its toe.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. Let's get to some of these hands raised over here. Bat Boy Supreme, you have something to say?
Yeah, I do actually. Maze touched on something really important, that she was a victim of feminism. In fact, we all are victims of feminism and radical Marxist progressive ideology in general. Why? It's because it is a weaponized ideology that is fed to the young at a very early age. A young adult does not form their final brain center, the judgment center of the brain doesn't calcify or harden until right about the age of 25. This is about the time where these people, where these young adults are leaving university fully indoctrinated, have had their minds, their brains rewired by this weaponized ideology. This is a this is what it does. So when you hear somebody like Elon Musk saying, the woke worm virus, really what he's saying is that radical Marxist progressive ideology is an actual, think of it in terms of like a spell that's being cast over the human mind, and it's completely rewriting it in foundational diametric ways than people you even touched on it earlier. You've seen people who've gone to university who went in with inherent family values, coming out completely quote unquote enlightened and rejecting years of teaching and conditioning, and becoming something completely different. They're a totally different person. They're a
Very well
different
said.
personality. They're a different person. They are a different. They think differently. They interact with the world differently. They see you. They see their peers and their families as an inherent enemy. This is exactly how this ideology works. You don't see that. You don't see that from conservative ideology. Conservative ideology doesn't do that. Why? Because it strikes at the very heart of what it makes us intuitively. We love our families, we love our country, we love God. Or even if you don't believe in God, you still have a moral sense of purpose and a sense of ethics, and you try to
No,
adhere to those things. But radical Marxist leftist ideology completely eradicates all of those things. It crushes the entire notion that that loyalty to country, God, country, and
the Bat
family
Boy.
should be completely
Perfect, Bat
obliterated
Boy.
yeah,
Uh,
in favor of the in favor of this of the hive mind of the collective. And I'll just
Oh
land it
yeah.
there. Thank you.
No,
Can I
you're
just?
doing good. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just, and I say this with love, and I don't expect anybody to really understand where I'm coming from. But and Bat Boy, I'm gonna mute you just because the audio's feedback. Thank you, guys. Like I even think that that's still living in the cognitive map. This isn't about two different kinds of people living in the same country. Like, do you guys know where this kicked off? This kicked off with the Kissinger report. Kissinger was a Department of State. Matter of fact, he was the advisor across many administrations. But when he did the Kissinger report, they created all these projects at the global level. Ooh, that was a bird that sounded very close. Sorry about that.
It's a robot.
Um, and it's like stop. But and
That's the
so this
Irish one.
is I know, but I just want us to like because whenever we are going down those cognitive paths, like what I mean is like the left Marxist people, then we begin to say yes, that's bad and this is good and I'm still on the side of good. Really, that's everywhere. It's blended into everything, and beginning to kind of step out of those is where I'm at right now, and I don't even know how to really put that into words, but I just feel like that we have been very um, we have been it's very difficult when we're attached to that, like the right versus left, and understanding that all of this has been advanced because we've been in the margins of our beliefs around that whole idea, like that it's the leftists that do this, and no, they've been pulling it off across all of the administrations.
Oh
And
yeah.
the thing
Mace,
is, we don't have to.
can I push back a little bit on that?
No,
This is
Bat Boy,
more of like a
Can I
yeah.
push on?
we got to move on to the next individual who's been waiting in line.
No problem. Okay, thanks.
I love you, Bat Boy. We'll talk about it in one of my spaces or whatever when we can
I,
discuss it later.
I love you too.
You can also email us at anyone listening. You can also email us at smartlyuneducated@gmail.com.
Yeah.
We'll have you on as a guest if you want. We can do anything you want. We'll be a platform for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyways, let's go to the
That's no
next
problem. You
person.
guys are in Dallas. I am.
Oh, awesome. So who is the other person who had their hand
We have
raised?
Pepe and we have Jake. So then after that, we'll go back. We'll kick back off with the rest of the content that you guys have. Go ahead, Pepe.
Okay, yeah.
Hey, I just want to add too, and you may be getting to it later on. Is you mentioned Milgram? I wrote my final paper in business psychology on Stanley Milgram, and I had an interesting take on it. Coincidentally enough, my take was, the obedience to authority, right? And I put that paper out in January of 2020,
Oh,
right
that's
before
dope.
everything went haywire, which I found fucking ironic once everything went haywire. Anyway, I'd like to add three more things to that, and this is how I feel society has been mind warped: is Pavlov's dog, conditioned response. How do I get something to do something? Then you get transition into Milgram experiment, obedience to authority. Because of an authoritative figure, I'm going to do it because they've got the freaking authority. They've got the knowledge. They've got the power. Then you go into Gell-Mann syndrome, where you isolate people into not knowing a lot about a bunch of different stuff, or a little bit about a bunch of different stuff. You make them specialize. So Gell-Mann is, you read an article in a magazine about carpentry, you're a carpenter, it's all bullshit. You turn the page, it's rocket science, so you believe everything on the next damn page, even though they lied to you on the first page. And then I believe that finally transitions to where we all are currently, or most people are currently, is Stockholm syndrome. We beg and clamor for a new system, but we support and defend and base all of our future decisions on the same system that has screwed us. That is Stockholm syndrome on a mass scale. One last thing, we talk a lot about fear based, fear this, fear that. Well, what is the opposite of fear? Faith. Faith in yourself, faith in your instinct, faith in your God. And I'll land my plane there.
Oh, that's
Very well
good.
said, Pepe.
Yeah. Hey, if you wouldn't mind, I threw our email into the space. I would love to read that paper you wrote. If you have a copy of it, I would love to read it. Please email it to us. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, please. Jake, what do you have to say?
Good evening, everyone. Maze, thank you for having space. And yeah, I just wanted to ask a question. You guys, one of the previous speakers mentioned that they were burning all the MK Ultra files, pretty much trying to cover it up. And I was just wondering, what was the backup plan they had in order to further their goals
Well,
with the whole MK Ultra control?
from my understanding from digging into this is that they already had a other project that was launched. They had actually numerous projects, because when you look into MK Ultra, one of the things I noticed, because I see MK Ultra talk and get mentioned on X and all these different social medias and all that crap. Everyone's like MK Ultra this, but they umbrella it. All they're saying is MK Ultra, and really, MK Ultra has sub projects, and it's MK Ultra sub project 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it goes on. I don't even know where the end is, because obviously there's no documentation that covers that, because it's been burned. But like, for instance, the what was it?
And they had MK Naomi and MK Delta that were a part of it as well. Other umbrella.
Umbrella projects, but those were separate, but also connected, because they took work, pretty much information and things they learned from their research and carried over to there.
So they had a fallback of use other projects that they've been doing. They just simply changed the name. I forget it off the top of my head. It's like MK. Oh god, it's like Serpo or
No, not Serpo. You talking about Mockingbird?
yeah, Mockingbird is one of them as well. So they didn't just get rid of it; they just changed the name.
Yeah,
And
sorry, go ahead.
smartly, if I may.
Please.
Yeah. And the best I can understand from whichever that Fort Detrick experiment was, I can't even remember.
The
Oh,
Winter
there's
Woods
so much.
conspiracy.
Yes, sir. Um, there was so much data that was collected to formulate conclusions. Once you do experiments, you collect exponential amounts of data, and then you draw the conclusions from that. Once you have your output, like once you have, it might only be like 4 or 5 pages of final conclusion of what dose did this and that the other. The underlying data is irrelevant once you have what you need.
That's
Mm-hmm.
yeah. That's again very well put. We have a lot of very intelligent people in this space today, which is
Awesome.
great.
I love it.
I love that.
I love it.
And I had another question regarding MK Ultra. Do you believe that MK Ultra is sort of used as a red herring nowadays, especially since especially with how it was used in one of the most recent Call of Duty games? Do you think it's more of a red herring nowadays
Oh,
than
100%.
anything?
Yeah,
That is like
100%.
a buzzword, if you will. MK
Mm-hmm.
Ultra nowadays is just like you've heard of this one. Don't look over here at the other one we're doing, because now it's all on your phone. They're simply on your computer manipulating your brain in
Mm-hmm.
different aspects now. Again, previous to our live stream that we're doing, we talked about frequencies and how they have banned certain hertz on the radio so that you don't feel calm and peaceful. Maze, I don't know if you have your 432 hertz bowl with you, but we would love to hear that one buzzed off through our headsets.
I will be inside in 1 second. I just stepped outside for 1 minute, but yeah, I
You're
will.
perfectly fine.
I can show them amplified emotion until we get there, Maze. That's up to you.
Well,
Kind of
I can
amplified
say
it.
this. I'm going to add one thing before I pull us into the Neuralink and get back to that.
Yeah, over the DARPA and all their
Yeah,
crazy
all
shit.
that fun stuff. And Blackrock's involved in this too.
Did you say Operation Gladio?
No, I did not.
Paperclip.
But yeah, so
there's one thing I wanted to add. So we all talk about everyone being brainwashed and manipulated, and there's this like neural war that's going on. Well, if you're not familiar with Yuri Bezmenov, so I don't know if anyone's heard of him, but he is a
The
former
four stages of
KGB
ideological subversion, normalization,
sir.
destabilization, crisis, and then normalization, where they take everything and everybody's just begging for anything,
Desensitization is the
please.
last one.
Yes, and we have a full episode. Like I'm not
One
gonna
of our
deep
very
dive.
first episodes.
Yeah, we have on our podcast, on Spotify, YouTube, all that fun stuff. We have a Yuri Bezmenov where that's all we talk about, and we go through all of it. So it's a full deep dive. I think it's like a 2.5 hour episode.
It
I
is,
don't
yeah.
remember. But point is that
Sound already whenever.
Oh, hell yeah. I'll finish this little tidbit. So, Yuri Bezmenov, he was warning everyone about what was happening. And in that, it's one of those things, everything he claimed was going to happen back in the 70s and all that fun stuff literally played out exactly like he said it would.
Mhm.
So the gender confusion, all that jazz, that is stuff he called out and he said was going to happen because they've been implementing it because it's I forgot how many years total. It's like, I know the first stage, demoralization, like demoralize a country. It's like 15 to 20 years, I think.
That was the hippie movement.
Yep. And which was
15 to 30.
manipulated. Yeah, it was a manipulated version of what he had seen and learned from, and from these like different monks and things like that. They took it and they perverted it and they created the hippie movement. The hippie movement is a manipulated cesspool. That's why it was ridiculous. Now destabilization, that was like roughly 5 years, something like that. And then crisis could be anywhere from weeks to months or a year. It was very short, like it was very sporadic. And then of course you have the normalization. Let's normalize everything that has transpired and all the changes. And that is supposedly indefinite. Like there's no altering it at that point, because now it's been ingrained into not just one generation, but several generations. And by the time it gets to the indefinite part of the most current generation, well, they're locked in. That's all they know. And so they're going to end up becoming like the boomers, where boomers go, well, back in my day, they become that now. But for all of the changes that took place over that, 30 years or 35 years, however long it took.
Well, back in my day, we had the Nokia brick phone that I could use to crush up my Adderall.
Would you mind if I corrected something real quick? Because I put a thread up this and I took it very serious on there. Okay, so it's the demoralization is 15 to 20 years. It states what it is exactly up there. Then you got your destabilization, which is going to be 2 to 5 years. Then you go to a state of crisis, which some would have considered a COVID, at that time, which is actually a 6-week period. And that's when they come through with the normalization, which is stage 4.
So I was right on the demoralization.
I gotta disagree though, because he was doing this back in like 19 1960. So 9/11 would have been the crisis for Yuri Bezmenov's sort of concept.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Hey,
well, some could
smartly.
say that. Some could say the that's what I was saying. Like you could say whatever it is, but did
Mhm.
it work? Is the question? Did they
The
hit the
answer is yes.
normalization?
The answer
Hey,
is yes, and in
smartly.
fact, what's up,
Oh,
Kev?
sorry.
Smartly. Does it all fall under the umbrella of ideological subversion? Because I that stands out to me in my mind.
Yeah. So it not necessarily all under ideological subversion. Yuri Bezmenov, I am kind of obsessed with him. I have read multiple articles and watched all of his videos.
Dude, it's not just you.
Yeah, it goes more toward the transhumanism aspect of it, and that doesn't mean transsexual. It means the mechanical and computerization of the human. So think cybernetics, think contacts, think all these things
Cyborg.
yeah, cyborgs. So think of it as using chips to manipulate you. That was the whole point of it getting to a traction, was to turn you into a sort of robot. May that be through technology, may that be through fear mongering. So there's the ideological subversion was just an aspect of it all.
I want to say Joe Kent. I love him or hate him. He wrote a whole book on it, didn't he? If I have his name right.
Yeah, Joe Kent. You got that in one. That was amazing. Great pool, by the way. But yeah, Joe Kent did a whole thing on it. Maze, can we please hear that bowl?
Yes, we
Yes.
can. Absolutely. And guys,
Everybody.
so just as a quick reset, I wanted to welcome everyone, give you guys a nice warm welcome. It's about 2 minutes shy of 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're here with Smartly Uneducated, which is Ben and Evan. And we're talking about the neural war, re-engineering minds for war, work, and control. And so we're about to kind of embark on the next segment before we take any more hands, Jake. And then we'll open right back up for people to comment. But just write it down, whatever it is that you want to say, and then we'll do it there. And so I am going to play or hit my sound bowl, 432 hertz sound bowl, and here we go.
Nice little reset right there, everybody. That's gonna like bring us perfectly into the concept around DARPA's technology that they invented to manipulate you. Simply put.
Yeah. So you were about to get into Neuralink.
Yeah, well, Neuralink and the NESD, the Neural Engineering System Design, referred to as NeuroFast, in a undisclosed document by DARPA themselves, that got us in a lot of trouble. So if you don't hear from us again for a little while, that's probably why. But they invented it to target neuroplasticity and to be able to put people in combat scenarios and other aspects of mind control within the push of a button.
Yep.
And they did this in like 1945.
Yep. And I have something to add to that, especially about mind control and sinking your brain into something where potentially you don't have much control anymore. So obviously everyone already knows that Neuralink, that what's, surface level, what's public is the fact that, oh, hey, we made this to treat neurological conditions like paralysis, blindness, epilepsy, all, and the, et cetera. And then also like, enable essentially like a telepathic type communication and memory replay. That is what is the pretty much the stated goals for the most part. Now, what is not being said about Neuralink is that there is concern that Neuralink potentially is kind of like I guess the wording for it would be like kind of like a public facing arm,
Yeah.
right? Of a more classified and deeper, agenda. And just to add the cherry to the top of what I just said, there have been patents filed that involve wireless brain to cloud syncing and closed loop simulation, like word for word, quote, closed loop stimulation. So basically,
That's horrifying.
These
dude.
are terms used in neuroweapon research. Hence the word weapon, neuroweapon research. There already been patents filed on this stuff, and it's all tied into Neuralink. So just throwing that out there, just to add it into it. And then, let's think about it as like military industrial type situation, right? Let's cross over in that a little bit. even though this is being kind of put like, you know, painted the picture of is that like, this is a consumer tech, right? Neuralink's innovations essentially like mirror language used in DARPA's covert programs. So its funding structure includes basically like shell entities, and they're all linked to military contractors, just so everyone's aware. I don't know if you deep dive this stuff. I've been deep diving Neuralink for a while now. That's the only reason I know this stuff. And they're all tied to military contractors. And like I said, I said it way earlier. Follow the money.
Yeah,
you're gonna find where it's coming from.
I just posted one of the patents that were filed for in 2013 that was specifically based around your phone to headphones to your brain usage and how they are all intertwined to keep you at a sort of lull, dumbed down state.
Yeah.
This was patented by the U.S. government, if I'm not mistaken, and it's so really consider the opposition in the lateral. We here really want to bring to light the concept of the generation after us who are going to be given these Neuralink and these chips sort of kind of without their consent.
Yes.
There have been studies and there have been videos from doctors in Japan that once they received a vaccine, their bodies were filled with nanobites and nanotechnology. Now, there's plenty of videos that you can find. There's plenty of different articles that you can see and read about that these nanobites would then go into your brain and want you to be more of a drone than anything.
You know, it's funny you bring that up. I didn't think to try to get this information. I need to go and hunt it down. I'll if I find it while we're doing this show, I'll post it into this X space in a comment or whatever. But when the pandemic started, there was, I want to say it was maybe 6 months in, there was that female doctor. She was a virologist.
Yes.
And she said, screw it, because they were under strict, rule that they weren't allowed to look at the, the vaccine under a microscope. That they weren't allowed to know what was really in it. They weren't allowed to investigate it. And she went ahead and did. And she was a virologist, and she was very well known. She was accredited. Like, I'm talking about in that, in the medical circle.
I remember very well.
And she was the one who found the nanobites in it. And she started to speak out about it, going, why are there microchips? There's literally microchips in here. Like, and they all have their own, like, basically Bluetooth signal. And she blew the whistle on it. And what happened to her within I don't even think it was a week.
It wasn't. It was within the day, pretty much.
She lost her license. They tried to put her in jail. Somehow she ended up not going to jail. I think a deal was made where basically she just shuts her mouth. She lost her career. And, she ended up coming out later again in the past 2 years, putting out videos, which is that lady that you're referring to. So I wanted to give some background on her. She was the one who was really trying to actually blow the whistle on it, and all that fun jazz. But with that being said, I want to give out a little PSA about the Neuralink, because I know I had mentioned like the patents being filed for wireless brain to cloud syncing and like the closed loop stimulation aspect. Well, in the media, like anywhere in the media, they were obsessing over pigs playing Pong. I don't know if you remember seeing that at all. Well, while that was going on and still going on, real test beds for brain control are already active in a bunch of classified circles, because we have a rule of thumb here. If we're getting the technology, if they released a new technology we haven't seen tomorrow, like think 6th gen warfare, which we just did an episode on that a couple weeks ago. Think of like the new F-47 that's about to come out. Well, if we're just now finding out about it right now, that means they've had it, or at least the technology of it, for a minimum 20 years. It's always a rule of thumb, minimum 20 years, depending on the technology. It could be 40 years. We've seen some, like, for instance, like a good example is bone conduction headphones. I'm sure you guys have heard of that, where you don't even have to put them in your ear. Well, the patent for bone conduction headphones was done in the 50s during Project Pandora. So, and that was during the Cold War. And bone conduction headphones came out, like 2008?
Yeah, they came out to the public around that time.
In the mid-2000s,
it was marketed
late
for
2000s.
runners.
Yeah. They had that technology already perfected way before. So that's just, I'm just laying this out so you guys really get a good idea here of what, what was really going on. That's just a fact, man. So I do want to talk about DARPA's N3 program.
Yes, I just
Good.
posted a link to it in the space chat. If y'all are interested to go look at the actual DARPA.mil research papers.
Awesome. Did you paste it into the thingy?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. If you don't know what DARPA's N3 program is and you never heard of it, it is literally a soldier mind interfacing. That's what it's for. So N3 stands for Next Generation Non-Surgical Neurotechnology. And they launched it, but DARPA launched it in supposedly in 2018. That's what they say. That's when it became public information. And it aimed to create wearable or head-mounted devices that allow soldiers to interface directly with AI systems and weapons without surgery at all. So like basically like real-time control of drones, surveillance systems, robotic units, like basically through your thought. Like that's literally what it was for. And then of course you got like two-way communication. So we're talking about like receive sensory data back into the brain. It's insane. And I'm going to end up messing up that word, I think.
This is my favorite part of the podcast, everybody, whenever Ben tries to say a big word.
Well, it says Magneto in the front, so I think of X-Men. But it's magnetoelectric nanoparticles that can wirelessly read neurons. So this is the type of tech that's involved in this. So, and then you've got non-invasive brain signal detection, which is called, the fancy word for it, it's essentially an ultrasound. That's the concept. It's basically taking ultrasound technology and then expanding upon it and then reapplying it somewhere else. They do this with numerous different things. This is just one of a bazillion things that they do this with. So this isn't, I don't know. For me, this is not just about, the N3 program is not about like just augmenting soldiers. I feel like it's about bypassing full personal consent of everything.
Yeah, it's bypassing the surgical aspect, just having it sort of Bluetooth to your electricity in your brain, because your brain produces a hertz at all times, and if they can hop into that, they can use it. That's what the whole 6G concept is, right? That's the next stage in technology, is the 6G, and they have many research papers about how they can use your energy and your electricity in your body to then send out radio signals and take over your brain yet again.
And I want to give a quote from DARPA's internal note, and this was leaked in 2019. This was a leak. This was not put out as like, oh, we're going to be public about this. No, it got leaked, and then they were trying to do damage control. But this quote that was leaked from an internal note states, quote, cognitive latency must be reduced. Direct signal feedback loops can be optimized via emotional response measurement.
Can you say that again?
Cognitive latency must be reduced. Direct signal feedback loops can be optimized via emotional response measurement. So give this person an emotional response and we can recalibrate him.
Anger.
Yeah, anger, panic. And look at all the people having anxiety attacks all the fucking time. And what? Everyone started having more and more anxiety attacks. Like what? I want to say it was after the first booster round shots came out for, for the chicken virus.
For the C word, right?
For the C word. Sorry, we post our stuff on other platforms, and YouTube basically is on the verge of banning us. So we're very lucky to even have an account with them. But basically, yeah, like that's what they're saying. Like, hey, we'll give them a emotional response so we can recalibrate their brain,
or just get rid of it entirely.
Yeah, or that.
So I mentioned at the top of the show that they have ways to just completely erase your memories and erase your thoughts so that they can put their own in there. And that's exactly what they would be doing with this N3 generation. So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
If y'all have any questions, feel free to raise your hands and ask away.
I think, Maze, do you have your hand up?
I do. It was just really quickly. When you guys were talking about Neuralink, I don't know if you guys, the timing of this I thought was quite interesting, where they dropped the telepathy tapes in YouTube, and everybody's like, "Oh wow," and I mean, it really, especially the people that knew about the Akashic records and
Mm.
who really, I am one that believes that it is possible that with these new theories around consciousness being quantum and how that's navigated. But then it wasn't, it was, I think, maybe 8 weeks. And then Elon Musk gets two trademarks under Neuralink, and one of which is telepathy. The other one is, um, what was it? Telekinesis. And so these
Mhm.
were two trademarks, and I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, and that's why I was saying earlier they have patents for brain to cloud syncing.
Well,
It plays into that as
it
well.
plays into
because,
the Gate project as well, right? I'm
Yes,
sure
it
all
does.
of you here have heard of the Gate project,
Mhm.
where they take the gifted and talented education program and they try to teach these children and these individuals different ways to use their brain power to be able to manipulate their surroundings and think faster and be stronger and smarter than everybody else. So that ties in perfectly with telepathy. And if you are
Mhm.
able to augment that to make it more powerful, why wouldn't they?
Yeah, why wouldn't they?
I mean,
Why not?
personally, I mean, if I could speak every language, think of it like Matrix, right? He's like, I want to download all kung fu.
I know kung fu.
You
Keanu.
you just press on your brain, you type on your phone, I want to learn jujitsu. Now you're a jujitsu master.
That's tight.
That'd be-
I mean, it's tight, but
it's a
I
cool
would never
concept,
let them put
but-
anything in my brain if I could help it. No, thank you.
Too late for that, big guy.
I'll do it the old-fashioned way.
And it's a little too late for a lot of us, right? The aspect of trying to detox from technology is very difficult in our modern age.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to your local grocery store and there's music playing, there's TVs everywhere that are without your consent putting things into your brain to buy.
Hey, if anything, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of homework. Look up, just for funsies, you guys will get a kick out of it if you take the time to go look it up. If you go, you mentioned grocery stores.
Yep.
And there's always music playing in a grocery store, and it's always on a shitty speaker, something that's just crap. Well, there's a reason for that. And I'll let you guys do some digging on that. That would be like a little Easter egg for you guys to figure out, because it has to do with the hertz.
Hey, Cash,
So
we got your hand up.
Cash has got his hand up.
Cash, you're muted. Yeah, there you go.
Double muted, my apology. Good evening. My accent may be a little hard. I hope not, but let's see. Can you guys hear me loud and clear? Because that is more important.
Yes, we hear you crystal
love
clear,
it.
Cash.
Beautiful. The gentlemen who were discussing, outstanding. I'm a 64-year-old Asian dude who was not, educated in West or nothing. But whatever you said, 100% accurate. Number
Thank you.
two, I'm blessed to be along with you guys right now, because my quest has been, I knew all that just listening to Alex Jones in his earlier times,
Mm-hmm.
human philosophy from Germany all the way up to Beirut, Gibran Khalil Gibran. I'm a free spirit. I try to attend Mais's space because she brings out beautiful topics. This neural war, re-engineering minds for war, work, and control, 100% accurate.
Mm-hmm.
But the purpose of this assembly is to acknowledge, then do what? That is what I want to know. Number one. Somebody touched that briefly, detoxify. Then we need to explore for my learning purposes. Because whatever Elon did with Neuralink, if we believe in any entity like the ring bell she rang a minute ago, I can swear on that frequency and I should be taken seriously then. I thought about it and I used to talk to my family. I'm tired of these headphones. This phone rings up there. I should be able to just in my mind think, yes, accept it. Now you are talking about all that. So I am beyond that curve of surprise. Now I am thinking how to mitigate this risk, because I believe in creative, like the theory that talks about God created us. And that makes me more responsible because then I'm answerable to someone. So, are there tools, techniques? I think the heart, brain, being the all level magnet, electric, all those wavelengths, resonance, whatever we want to call it, to the degree of quarks. I think if somebody will learn how to operate with the neurons that are why in our heart, they will be saved from this chaos. And I wish people with your intellect should now focus on why a heart is there. Is it just a pumping station for blood? I refuse to accept that because some scientists have talked about it. It is made with one piece, and look at the complexity. And then they say it has neurons and it has electromagnetic discharge, the pulsating. That's why we give electric current to let it recharge. My apology, but that is the question or quest I want you guys to address whenever you will, and I'll make sure I'm there to listen in.
I've got a good answer to that. Well, one, your heart's just a battery. That's what it is. And if you can manipulate a battery, well, then you can control the unit that it's connected to. So that that's my answer to that because it's no different than you take a computer, a tower, a PC, right? I've been building them since I was like 8 years old, and I can tell you right now, if you manipulate the the power supply, you can do a lot of different things with it. You could turn your own tower basically into a little bitty EMP if you can control the power supply and manipulate it. There's a little bit more that has to go a little bit involved into it. However, at the heart of it, that's my analogy for it. Now, for like all the other things going on, and like how do you like get these things out of you and like clean yourself? I can tell you right now, the first and foremost step is start putting your turn off, unplug your routers, your TVs, anything that puts off a Bluetooth and Wi-Fi signal at night. Unplug it, turn it off, because those frequencies are literally reverberating and penetrating all through your skull and every inch of your body, every square inch. It's all going through it. In fact, here recently, my wife and I actually bought it's a EMF blocking hats. So it looks like just a regular ball cap, but it's what it's made out of and what it's lined with. And I can personally say it actually works. After about 30 minutes of wearing it, I noticed I felt really calm, and I was like super anxious before I put it on. And it's like almost like a therapeutic thing now. I always try to wear it randomly, as much as possible. Hats give me headaches, so I have to power through that most of the time. But the next step is actually doing a detox, and I know Evan knows a bunch about that.
Yeah, yes,
I
I
can
do.
add something too.
Please.
Um, when it comes to the detox, there's the heavy metal one, and I'll let you actually talk about that. But I wanted to highlight the Heart Math Institute. I'm not sure if you guys heard about it, but it focuses all of its research on the heart-brain connection. And so, it really helps with stress reduction, emotional regulation, heart coherence, and it's a state of like synchronizing your heart and your brain and your nervous system. So all of their research is kind of like along those lines, and it's developed scientifically validated tools and techniques such as biofeedback devices and whatnot, the quick coherence technique. It's quite amazing. I mean, I've covered some of the studies that they've done in my spaces, but it enhances your resilience and it helps you improve your emotional, physical, and mental well-being in the technological like kind of environments that we're in. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, Cash, I wanted to say thank you for raising your hand and coming in here because that is a very, how do I say, heavy answer, a heavy-handed response. You bring in the concept of technologies around us. How do we protect ourselves from it? It's very difficult. They are creating different clothings that you can wear. I know my co-host here, Ben, he wears different EMF blocking signal devices. They create wristbands that will block EMF around your wrists, around your chest. There's different shirts you can buy, they're like 20, $30 on Amazon that you can wear a t-shirt that blocks all electric magnetic frequencies. If you don't want these things manipulating your body, which they do, and we're in a studio surrounded by technology at all times. The second I get home, I make sure I detox. Put yourself into grass. Nature is the best detox you can do for yourself.
Yeah, grounding's a big
Putting
deal.
your bare feet into earth, just clean as day.
Mhm.
Just put your feet in earth and just stand there and read a book. Go outside for a little while. That's the best way to detox from it. Now,
And
granted,
find some ley lines too. You can find ley line intersection points close to you. I think they have ley line maps that are pretty accurate, or you can use dowsing rods. But especially if you do the grounding thing, it's pretty
it's very
powerful.
important to clear your mind in that fashion. The earth has its own frequency that then will heal your own body from these electronic to detox you from it. So
Right. I think. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Murat. I
yeah,
don't know. I saw your hand go up. I just
Yeah,
didn't
sorry, I
know
was just
that.
trying to raise my hand, not wave the hand. I
just
just
briefly, I wanted to say, Cash, go out there and find yourself some EMF clothing to cover yourself with. That way you can stop the transmitter from
Yeah.
answering your phone for you.
Yeah.
I just had one point to bring in kind of a broader thing. It's not directly to like waves or radiation, but when it comes to mind control or the ability to be controlled, um, one when it comes to the modern industrial techno capitalist state, right? Herbert Marcuse had a book that was called The One-Dimensional Man. I don't know if any of you guys had read it, but he describes the modern person as a one-dimensional man because we're in this like consumer consumptive society, and so we've sort of eliminated that drive because the way we advance is because we have a drive to consume, right? And so that drive to consume things is what helped us create great things and advance civilization. And so now when the populace is at a place when all of our impulses and desires and consumption needs can be taken care of within just seconds or minutes, well, we've eliminated that desire to rebel, to overcome, to advance. And so I personally kind of, since I've read that book, it had an effect on me, and I know that I'm not going to be able to just unplug from the world, but I do try to minimize my reliance on technology because I do recognize the way that like each convenience that technology gives me, um, it sort of dulls our resilience or our endurance or anything that you gain from resistance. You
Yeah,
guys get what I'm saying?
it's meant to stop your desire for uh, not necessarily conquering, for lack of better words, but your desire to want to create. And if it's all created for you at an instant, why do you need to do anything else? Right?
Yeah, and we always assume that like control, comes from like this big brother kind of like force, and hard power, and sometimes it can just come from, candies and drugs and
Yeah.
pleasures, and just kind of keeping you dull and passive and docile. Control comes in different ways, and the modern state and the way that the things that technology offers us today, unfortunately, makes it difficult to not be controlled.
Oh yeah.
Very, very well said. Yet again, the concept we briefly touched on is at that maybe 30 minutes ago was about food. The food you're eating on a regular basis is now meant to quell your desires, make you docile and not wanting to overthrow, for lack of a better term, or create. Right. So the instant gratification you're getting from food and the instant, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the instant
You get basically
I'm losing my train of thought on that
you
because
basically get
I
like
eat shit food
you
sometimes.
essentially get like a
Dopamine.
dopamine.
Yeah, there it is.
dopamine. Yo,
Thank you.
that jinx. Sorry, I couldn't help but say jinx.
Yeah, so the
But
dopamine
yeah,
receptors
dopamine.
are overthrown and they're overpowered by all the things that you're taking in on a regular basis. So the detox doesn't just come from getting rid of technology. You have to get rid of all dopamine intake,
Mm-hmm.
and sweets, beer, things like that, right?
Oh, I love beer too.
So that
Yeah,
great
and then
input.
another thing to throw in there is we actually did an episode a few weeks ago on the relation between schizophrenia and methamphetamines, and also
Camera.
amphetamines. And right now, I mean, you see another way, and sorry, I know we're kind of jumping around a bit, but another way that they segue in for altering people's minds, control. Because if you think and look at everything from, just take MK Ultra alone and just what they laid out within that, psychological torture to drug, inducing drugs into somebody, manipulating that way, hypnosis, all these things. So if you look around you, if you take a minute to change your perspective and actually just look around at what we operate in this world with, is that we're always getting a form of hypnosis pushed in our face. Everyone's got a television in multiple rooms in their houses. You've got your phone that's always on your hip that you're constantly looking at. So there's your one aspect of hypnosis. And then you look at the food that you're ingesting, because most of the food that you go and buy at the grocery store, you go walk down the aisles, most of it's literally horrible for you. And yeah, some people will say, could try to rebuttal some of that, but when it comes to the food, but when it comes to the food aspect, well, where they get you is how they label it, and they actually mislabel it intentionally, but it's not against the law for them to.
Or they overlabel it.
Things like that. And say like 0 grams trans fats,
gluten-free.
And so you think it's good. And then like the gluten thing, I don't care who, I will die on this hill. Anyone who says that gluten's actually a thing where they're allergic to it, no, they're just allergic actually to something else within their food that they're taking. It's not gluten. It's it's the most annoying conversation. But the other aspect is pharmaceuticals. Everyone is depressed. I'm so stressed out all the time.
Speak for yourself. I'm not depressed.
I'm not depressed. Get out of here, depression. You're not my friend. But no, it's like everyone says they're depressed. Everyone's like, I can't focus. I can't do this, blah, blah, blah. Well, what happens? Well, everyone's getting pumped with antidepressants. Everyone's getting pumped with Adderall, Vyvanse, you name it. There's a plethora of different, forms of treatment that they have for ADHD and all that stuff. Well, when people are on these things, it makes them extremely susceptible to becoming schizophrenic. Now, don't misconstrue. I know that in the movies and things like that, they portray schizophrenia as like multiple personalities. That's not true. That's not what schizophrenia is.
It is a part of it, though.
It's a part of it to a degree, but it's on an extreme end where it's like you've hit all benchmarks. You're at the total you could be as like full maxed out. Then the multiple personalities is really you engaging with delusional hallucinations that you think are real. And then that's it. Multiple personality disorder is a very different thing in a lot of ways. But they like to lot them together.
Psychosis.
Not right.
Whoa.
Yes, exactly. A full-blown psychosis.
Hey, so I see over here that Sea of Love or Lavender. I can't quite see what that says, but you have had your hand raised for a while. Is there any input that you want to bring to the table?
Yeah, hi. Good morning. It's 4:29 a.m. where I am. Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, thank you for inviting me, Maze. So sorry if I sound very sleepy. I am. I just woke up coincidentally and I found that I was invited to the space and I listened in and it piqued my interest and I just wanted to add my 2 cents. With regards to the neural war, I don't know if this conversation has been had or is being had about how they're going to, or how they already have connected people to the Internet of Bodies, which is how they refer to it. I'm not speaking about transhumanism. I'm speaking more about how they can affect and tap into people, as Yuval Harari described as humans are hackable animals. Now, when you have Yuval Harari, who is a professor and top advisor to Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum, where all heads of states tend to congregate, where he has admittedly said that he grooms young global leaders and places them into positions of powers in countries. When you have him saying that, and his top advisor, who is a professor at the Israeli, I can't remember the name of the university, when he comes and he speaks openly about humans are being hackable animals, I'd like to because at this point it seems like conjecture, but then when there is already peer-reviewed literature out there that is explaining the dots that we need to connect in order to understand what they have tried to keep from us. There's a gem of a paper out. It's peer-reviewed. It's published by Oxford University. A control study where they did something called neuromodulation. If you're familiar with also another paper by the Rockefeller Center called "Flipping the Switch." It speaks about, but like go back to the Oxford dictionary, the Oxford University one. And I've already I've added a link to it, so you can go and access it yourself and listen to and read what they speak about. They speak about using EMF and external magnets to control and change humans' perceptions, their views, their value system to make them more manageable. And I'm guessing that this doesn't just involve controlling parts of the brain, but also at one point to hack humans. So what they did in the controlled study was they had a group of people, and part of their methodology was to test on two specific views. They used your connection to God, and they used your views towards immigration. Now, this study was conducted quite some time ago. And what they did was they used external magnets, in order to use EMF to target certain parts of the brain which deal with your cognitive value system. And at the end of the experiment, they found out, and the most bizarre questions that they asked, and I read the fine print, and even though they edited, I have screenshots of the original questions they asked. They asked, "What are your views? I mean, what do you feel about your reverence of God, okay, versus Satan?" Why would they use those two polarities, And then after they had targeted the brains of this control group, they found that people were more sort of less adverse towards Satan and more accepting of him as not being sort of like a bad guy. The next one was immigration. And now, as you can see, they're trying to immigrate Gazans into other places around the world. And they also have this huge, they work in tandem. That's why the Great Reset is inextricably linked to the Greater Israel Project. Anyhow, so with neuromodulation, to get to the crux of what we're talking about, it's already been proven that graphene oxide is used as an adjuvant in the, what did you refer to it as, a chicken vaccine, the C vaccine? Okay, so graphene oxide was used as an adjuvant, and it's been proven that there's a peer-reviewed paper on that. I've already added it. I like to always back up what I find with if it's already published, so it doesn't seem conjecture. And if they have already, let's say they have already injected most of the world with that vaccine, with the graphene oxide, and also as Dr. Andreas Novak, who died right after he warned the world, okay, if you guys are familiar with him, about them, they're using graphene hydroxide. Also, anyhow, so the properties of graphene is that it's incredibly magnetic, it's very pliable, and it's tiny. It's the size of one atom. And why do they use that? Because it's razor sharp, and it crosses. That's why their vaccine crossed the blood-brain barrier instantly within 4 hours of being injected into the human body. So it crossed the blood-brain barrier and it wrapped around the neurons in the brain. That's why you find mRNA replicating itself. I mean, people focus a lot on mRNA, but they don't focus on the other substances within the vaccine. That is how
Yeah,
they
I'm
will
gonna chime
be.
in too after.
Yeah, that is how they will be or are already controlling people. Now, why do they need to do that? Um, it is obviously linked to their geopolitical moves. I mean, even now, finally, a paper, or let's say an open letter has gone out challenging Bobby Kennedy, who was, I think, in my opinion, one of the biggest pretenders ever, of controlled opposition. He used the Maha movement, okay, to gain people's trust okay, when he himself was one of the freedom fighters against the use of mRNA and its toxicity. And now he says there's not enough studies, and he's actually pushing for vaccines. He's pushing for the mRNA to continue.
Mhm.
So an open letter written by, if you guys are familiar with Catherine Austin Fitz, she signed that letter.
Mhm.
Mary Bowden, Dr. Mary Bowden, several other respectable doctors and professionals uh, openly challenged him and asked, why are you not challenging the PrEP Act? Why are you dissolving that? It's because and also just in time also for the Palantir initiative being pushed by Trump. That's
Yes,
why they always
see,
have to.
Yeah.
you have added a lot of information
Yeah.
here for us to dive
I
into.
wanna.
Can I just wrap it up quickly? So the
Please. Yeah.
reason, yeah, okay. So that is why when you find a little circus act that they put on, okay, which is like the circus act between Biden and Trump when they would have these wars amongst themselves, when they're both two sides of the same coin, serving the same agenda, which is the Great Reset. And now you have Elon and Trump having this little, slap fight in front of people, okay. It is to cover up the Palantir movement. Now I'm speaking from the Middle East.
Yep.
The what's it called? The biometric system has been enforced on almost everyone. What is what is not discussed is that all that data, and that's what they said. That's what Boris Johnson, if you guys remember, he went on he spoke at the UN National Assembly. When he addressed the crowd, he spoke about everyone will be surveilled. All of your data will be, and I'm going to quote him verbatim, will be stored in a cloud that lowers oppressively over the human race. You cannot hide anything that you think of or speak about. So when you have a prime minister who was also a young global leader, okay, trained
We
by
have
Klaus
time
Schwab.
constraints, C. I just want to let you know if you could, wrap it up so that we could break down some of that stuff, and there's still some content remaining too.
Yes.
Okay. So basically, all I'm trying to say is now they're going to, while they've already pushed the biometric system onto the Middle East, one country which I shall not name, but I've written about before, and an MP from that country has spoken about, and then he was silenced. Um, 100,000
You can
nationals.
name it. You can name it.
Yeah,
I have
just
a
tell us
very
what.
free speech.
I,
Yeah.
I can write it in private, but I'd rather not because I don't want to. Anyhow, because I live here
Please
anyway.
email us. Please email us at smartlyuneducated@gmail.com. We will talk to you more
Yeah,
heavily.
absolutely. So
I
you pretty much were talking mostly about the biohacking aspect around Charles Schwab and the WEF and the idea of all your information being put up into the cloud. So
Mhm.
all of the data, all of the information around the human race is going to be available for everybody at all times.
Yeah. And I don't know if you heard earlier. I don't know when you started tuning in because I know it's like super early in the morning for you, which is actually, I think you said it was like 4:30 when Ursula Klaus to that. I actually get up at 3:45 a.m. Best time to go to the gym. Great way to start your day too, by the way. I'm gonna push that out there. Go work out, guys. But you, I don't know if you tuned in or were tuned in earlier, but I mentioned how there are, when it comes to Neuralink, there are patents that were filed, and this is all public information. There was patents that were filed for body to cloud syncing.
Yep.
So just play everything you're saying is playing on to actually things we were talking about earlier or partially earlier. And then you actually mentioned, oh man, I can't remember the word now. Graphite. What was it called again? You said it was
graphene and graphene hydroxide.
yeah. So I don't know if you know who actually discovered, or sorry, I should stage this correctly. So in World War II, the Nazi scientists, when they were doing experimentation on twins and all these horrible experimentations that they were doing, one of their divisions, and this is actually within documents you can find within the CIA archive. I do not have them up in front of me right now. I did not expect us to be talking about
Me
that.
either.
But you can find it in the CIA archives where there are the good chunk of it's redacted, but it has to do with the Nazi scientists that were brought over during Operation Paperclip, and I forgot which scientist it was. He's not one of the most commonly known ones that everyone
Not
drops.
Eric
like
Traub.
No, but basically they are the ones who actually discovered the pre version of that, and that's where it actually came from, was from these horrible experiments that they were doing and trials and
That's what
all
they
this
use
stuff.
for nanotechnology to put inside your bloodstream.
Mm-hmm.
But since that was a very long discussion here, we have a few other hands raised over here. Let's get to some of those folks as well. I believe
Yeah, can I
Zulu.
just chime in really quickly?
Please,
Because
please.
I think it's just to be able to balance this out a little bit. I think the greatest gift that we have, which is also our vice right now, is our ability to believe, right? Belief isn't something that we can just choose. It is something that begins to crystallize as we're able to use our cognitive processing and frames of reference and confirm the information packets in which we're getting. And so I think, and I offer this in a way because I feel like we have been, in our, let's just say, truth seeking. What comes from that is an obvious, like probably an unanticipated level of obligation, where we begin feeling this stress, this urgency, like something's happening, things are shifting, and a lot of times I think that sends us into these loops where we begin continuing the research, and I would say further crystallizing our belief collectively in what they are doing. And then the reason why I present that is because I think the change is going to have to be a shift in how we approach this, because it's through, like, our resistance language typically is around, like, oh no, it's fascism, oh no, it's totalitarian, oh no, all these things. And to me, that becomes a mind virus that begins to it's very contagious. And then what we're doing is we're adopting a lot of other people's belief in these things, and then it begins to amplify that into our reality. And the reason why I say this is because I think, my exploration of understanding this better, and our belief in the way that we communicate with, let's just say, the lattice, the information, like, there's something very powerful there that really probably would, I would say, it should have a lot of our attention, because I think that that's where, like, there's no control that people can have over you unless there's, like, this collective belief. And that's what we're seeing, is that we're actually spreading this collective belief into all of this. And I know that this is a little bit wee woo, but I also wanted to present this. Like, when we think that this huge system is, like, going to trap us, like, in this, and we have this, like, resistance to totalitarianism, what we miss are the invitations and the participatory aspect of the game, which is interesting because they're the data that we are giving, especially through these, and they keep dropping these trauma based. And I know, though, this sound crazy, but this is literally what is happening, is, like, we are there's superficial, like, feed culture, where digital, like, our into our mind, it's like a lot of shallow processing. We listen and then we forget, and then we listen and then we forget. It's like this on repeat. There's no deep pondering or integration into coherent, like, understanding, right? And so what's happening is that they're getting all this data about, like, how we react, very reactive. And I just want to let you guys know that there's a whole another system at play of, like, a much larger coherence that is very biological. It's bio-cybernetic. And, like, it's so deep that I don't even really know how to talk about it with, like, normal people. People look at me like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, because there's an element of this that I want you guys to be able to explore in order to take your power back. Because does that make sense? Like, there's
Yeah, it does.
No,
truly,
that makes perfect sense.
yeah. How we get, like, into the tailwind of this, typically there's a decision point. There's lots of decision points that we miss because we're so busy moving in that current that is we're very reactive. And I just wanted to offer that, and we can maybe explore this in one of the future spaces or whatever. But I do think it's very important, especially as truth seekers and sharers of information, to also offer that as a pathway for, um, you know, to learn and to overcome a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with now.
So, Maze, are we getting back to the Jerusalem's?
The who?
Jesuits?
We only got about 15, 20 minutes left. Let's get over here to Zulu.
Oh no, it was off the pill.
was off the pills
Yeah, off
first?
the pill's
Go ahead.
been waiting a while.
No, thanks for the mic. I first put my hand up to respond to smartly uneducated. And it was just the response to the gluten allergy.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually an autoimmune disease for some. For some people, it is an autoimmune disease. And if you do a deep dive on it, you will find how they well, we could talk about hacking, how they manipulated the plant back in as far as back as the 30s. So
Without a doubt. No, I
With
know
yeah,
that.
glyphosate,
no
so
question. Yeah, I have a daughter. She was diagnosed at 7. She's 29 now. But I've learned a lot. It's called celiac disease. There's another one too. Some people get these really weird skin rashes or open sores on their legs or whatever. And all they got to do is eat gluten free and it goes away. It's such bullshit. It everything is biological war. We've been living in it. We were born into biological war. This is where we're at today. Just to respond to what Sea of Lavender said a lot tonight. 100%, this is what they're after. But I just want to respond to Maze as well. How, in conversation with people, they think you're just nuts and they just can't comprehend it.
Yeah.
Well,
No, without a doubt.
they're writing it, right? It's like Klaus Schwab has written it in his books, and governments all over the world have adopted onto this. It's stemming from, well, we know where it's stemming from, but I mean, how many layers do we want to go? I just want to, surface level with receipts. It's called Foresight Institute. And you guys have them. I'm a Canadian and I've learned a lot through some faction called the Policy Horizons Canada. Well, they're actually Foresight Institute. You guys have them, and I think it's Sacramento or San Francisco.
It's somewhere over there. It's one of those.
and we have to
Yeah,
rapid fire, just so you know, because we have less than 10 minutes left before we have to close. But just go ahead.
that's where the headquarters are. But just to say this is global. It's about augmenting humans, but the word that people need to find is biodigital convergence, because this is what the governments are selling it to you as. It's biodigital convergence, and yes, 100%, it is about surveillance. You can get into Raytheon, you can get into blue streetlights. Yeah, it's a hot topic, guys.
Oh yeah.
I'm glad.
Well,
I'm
I
glad to hear.
wanna
I'm glad to hear you guys talking about it. Is all I wanted to say. Just wanted to
I want to
say
throw
my
something
piece.
in there to you about the gluten thing, which I know what you're talking about. I've researched all that, and what you said is true. That stuff you will come across 100%. However, there is something, and this will be something for you to look into, and then you can make your own judgment. But the whole gluten thing, where it says gluten free on a box or a can or whatever you're buying, and you had stated like, oh, when they eat gluten free, it goes away. Well, the reason that gluten free stuff came out, I was not prepared for this conversation, so I don't have it in front of me. I have to go and hunt it down. But there are documents within the CIA archives that actually outline and talk about how there are people. It's essentially how they manipulate our food, and we get pumped full of chemicals, and like even the meats you buy are pumped with different hormones and testosterone from another foreign animal to then manipulate it more, and there's chemicals within that because it's all synthesized. And the people who have developed a gluten quote unquote allergy, and they have to go and eat something that's gluten free, that was developed within it, like outlines it in these documents. Now there's chunks of it that is basically just redacted, so you can't right when you're getting to something really juicy, all of a sudden it's like black lines everywhere and you're just like, what the crap. But you have to kind of like jump around it, and it's like, I think the document it's close to 30 or 40 pages long, And basically,
I'd love you to send it to me. If you
yeah,
could send that to me, that'd be awesome. I'd love to read it.
yeah,
But
because
I'll just be honest. I'll
Mhm.
just be straight up with you. I think absolutely everything is blamed. I blame it all on vaccines. She was diagnosed with diabetes at 5.
Yep.
2 years later, it was celiac.
Mhm.
It's very common in diabetics and
Mhm.
litany of other things.
Yeah.
There's no question to me.
Oh yeah.
This biological war,
Oh
right? But
yeah.
I would
No, without
love
a
to
doubt.
read that document you're talking about
Yeah, no, for
100%.
sure.
I'd love to.
Shoot us an email at smartlyneducated@gmail.com and I will hunt that thing down and send it to you. But yeah, so basically it outlines, and that's why they came up with the gluten-free products that still have chemicals in it and a bunch of other things that they don't actually identify, publicly. And it's there because it's their remediation to the gluten issue that arose because the individuals who got a gluten allergy was a mutation that happened that they didn't want to happen. So like, how do we course correct it? Oh, we'll create a new product of food through all these things. Because if you look at everyone who makes our food, it's owned by like the same 3 corporations.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you for sure.
So a little summarize of tonight, right?
Yeah. Shit.
We have a lot of biohacking and a lot of biodiversity mindset in that regard, to where our bodies are being manipulated to do as we don't want and without our consent. That is what the overlying issue is here. It comes down to having an ability to fight against it. So as Cash gratefully asked us, how do we combat that, is through having to detox, having to find a way out of the system to get it out of your body, to stay away from it. But before
There's also frequency machines, guys, that create
Yep.
Faraday cages. If you don't know about that, we can maybe have I don't know, space midweek. I have one, and there's frequency sets that are able to emit it for 30 foot radius. So I think that there are things that we could definitely discuss and I don't know, explore. But I just wanted you guys know that there are things that you can do, and not to feel like, oh my God, I'm just gonna be controlled.
Absolutely. I want to get Cody in here real quick. He has his hand raised. I want to say hi to him real quick. Cody, what do you got?
Hey, how's it going, brother? I was just gonna raise my hand and chime in during the closing notes, so you can continue with the segment.
Oh, okay.
Outstanding. Zulu, you've been patiently waiting. Do you have anything quickly to add to us?
Yeah,
Yeah,
rapid
no,
fire, guys.
yeah, no, just great conversation about re-engineering minds for war, work and control. I deal with unresolved trauma and family systems through a methodology called family constellations. And Mason, I've had this conversation several times about how people can be manipulated through their unresolved traumas. And I think that our government and our infrastructure is a mirror of our unresolved dynamics. So, a lot of people won't like to hear this, but if everybody, a true act of patriotism is to heal, right? Is to break the generational curses that are happening in your family system, so we can solidify the family, we can be less triggered, we can be less manipulated by our adversaries. And the way that you take down the United States is you maximize the trauma, you maximize division, and you pour gasoline on each one of those sides, right? So the country tears itself from within, rather than saying there has to be solid tension between the left and the right to create an incredible society that we have based on this idea of individual responsibility. So I approach the healing modality from a very masculine, non-woo-woo, very technical, very blocking and tackling aspect. And I truly believe that if you assume the responsibility to heal, that you will become unmanipulatable, right? That you become way less vulnerable to triggers or these mind viruses that Maze was talking about earlier. That Gat said's the parasitic mind, right? That these woke mind viruses, woke right, woke left, whatever that is all fueled by this victim perpetrator narrative. That unless you heal that dynamic, you'll continually get caught into the next wave of ideological mind, phase locking.
Yeah, we talked about that briefly at the start of the
Right.
show as well, to recognize the patterns and to get against them and fight against them in its own right. But we need to say thank you to our sponsors real quick and then end the show out, don't we? No?
No, there is
Can I just point it out real quick?
I got it,
One thing
Doc.
right there because y'all
Hold
did a
on one
good job.
second.
Oh no,
No, sorry. What was that?
I was saying y'all did a good job because you can't allow like the stream of conscious, the narrative seeding and stuff to go on. When May said rapid fire, she knows because she gets rapid fire right here. So Yuri Bezmenov, y'all touched on something good. I put a little something up there in the jumbo. There's a great 30-minute watch of it. Look into that stuff, folks, because one question that he asked, or he was asked, is there anything that the American people can do? And that was the answer to that. He had an answer. It was yes, wake up. So
Wake up,
that's
pay
where we're at.
attention, right?
Hey, Yo, could you send that to us over just in a DM
Or whatever.
just because there's so much, there's a bunch of different comments and different things, and
Yeah.
it's hard to switch back and forth.
But yeah, so thank you to our sponsors, Bad Cat Studios up in North Carolina. Thank you so much for the artwork and some of the logos and things that we use for our merch and everything like that. Thank you to the use of our theme song and out song,
David Southerner,
and
Yeah.
Dustin Beck, called Sea of Theseus. And that's pretty much our show, everybody. Thank you.
Oh no,
well,
I got something.
go ahead, yeah.
There's one imperative thing because there's a bunch of stuff. I had a bunch to go through. Obviously, we've never done this like collaboration before, so I did not know how it was gonna go by any means. So I know that we ended up doing a bunch of questions and all that fun stuff, which is awesome. This is what we've been wanting to do, but I did not know how it was gonna go. So there was a bunch of things I wasn't able to get to that are very imperative that I never see anyone talk about. Now, when I say I don't see anyone talk about, obviously they do get talked about, but it's in very limited circles. But one thing that is imperative to know is that none of this is possible unless your amygdala is hardened. Like for them to manipulate you and for all these things, these tools that they are using to mess with your head, it's not possible unless the amygdala is hardened up. And the reason I say that, this is just segueing into some other things, but this is very important because this is about suppressing empathy and like suppressing fear. And it's all attached to the amygdala. And I know that I forgot who was speaking earlier. She was talking about the Middle East and
Sea of Lavender, I believe.
yeah. So one of the things I was going to bring up because she mentioned which plays into this 100%, because she had mentioned the whole, biometric connection, cloud syncing, it's all remote, like you don't even have to be injected with something, like they have it. Well, the thing is that that's not possible unless the amygdala is hardened. And one of the things also about the biometric aspect, it has to do with DNA. Your DNA has to be recognized. Well, one thing about DNA, if people don't know this, is that DNA, if you look at it on a microscope, there's been a lot of breakthroughs in understanding DNA strands in everybody. And basically, it almost is like a server tree in a computer. Like if you hosted a server, it's almost like that. It carries genetic digital thumbprints of your entire ancestry. Like and it's more so than that. That's an understatement. And when it comes to the biometric side and then this linking up, so think about it like this. So sky's the limit almost, especially with quantum technology at work and being implemented. Well, basically DNA, if they have your DNA now and the syncing is starting to happen, well, they don't need to get your children's. They don't, because all of a sudden your child carries the same genetic markers as you. So if you have it and your spouse has it, or vice versa, whichever, male or female, doesn't matter, and you have children together, well, that child now is synced up as well. And
Pardon me, that isn't what I said. If you allow me, that is not what I said. What I was speaking
I
about.
was playing into it. That's all I was using it as a reference, because on the
Yeah.
biometric side, DNA plays a huge role, and
No,
with cloud
but
syncing.
no, I did not tie up.
I know he
biometric.
said that he was playing into what you were saying, not that you said it. He was adding to that.
Yeah, I'm just
Okay.
adding.
Just for clarification, because he said he did agree, and of course I respect his opinion. In case I was not understood, listeners here didn't understand me either. The biometric system does not have anything to do with what I was speaking about, the neuromodulation, which is them using graphene oxide within the vaccines. That's why
Yeah, he
they
didn't
want.
think he did. He was giving
Yeah,
us an
yeah, he said
outline, which
he
I
agreed with
forgot
you.
now because you derailed it.
No, it's okay.
But
No, it's no, she's fine. But yeah, we're closing Sea of Lavender,
thank
so
you
this is our
so
closing
much,
remarks. And yeah.
Maze, for having us here. Thank you, Cody, for
Yeah.
putting this all together. Thank you all for joining us.
So, oh yeah, I know we got to close out, but I just want to say that when it comes to the amygdala, one of the things you can do, because I guarantee anyone listening right now, the majority of you probably have a hardened amygdala.
Most definitely.
Most definitely, because of what you eat, what you're exposed to in frequencies, the works. If you want, when you get that thing to soften up and start actually functioning correctly, it is a night and day difference. I've had to go through a lot of things myself in order to tackle that narrative, you know, to actually put myself through it, do all these different things. So, you know, if your amygdala is hardened up, you're going to find yourself getting stressed all the time, anxious all the time. You know, you're going to find yourself getting, you know, fighting depression thoughts randomly. You'll find yourself, you know, behaving in ways that have become normal to you, but you've lost touch essentially with how you normally operate, because this has been happening to your entire life. And, you know, so I'll leave it at that because I know we're out of time. But yeah,
Until next time.
Yeah, until next time, guys. Also, if you guys have not, we would appreciate a follow. Like, because we're still pretty new here on X, and it'd be awesome if we could grow it. It'd be awesome if we could grow our other platforms. So please, if you guys are, you know, like this conversation that Maze was so awesome enough to host for us and do all that stuff, yeah, find us on, you know, YouTube. We have a link tree on our profile. Like, please subscribe to our stuff.
Yeah, we're live every single
Can I
Friday.
comment really quick, fellas?
Please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, great show as always. Please give these guys a follow. Something they brought up earlier was that, you know, a lot of these other platforms are suppressing them, and, you know, are on the verge of deplatforming them. So, you know, if this conversation resonated with you guys at all, you know, give them a follow, help them grow on here, and, you know, help spread the word. They have a wealth of information. If you go to their page, go to their link tree, check out their Spotify, go follow their Spotify. That's where I found them at. And I mean, just go through the cache of information that's in there alone, and it'll blow your mind. But no, thanks for hosting this, Maze, and Ben, Evan, great show. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for taking all the questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Y'all have a wonderful evening. Until next time, huh?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And yes, until next time. And thank you all for tuning in. And maybe we'll do more of these these upcoming Fridays. But yeah, with that being said, have a great night. Sorry, Erickson, we'll get to you next time. I mean, it was great to see you here, but we'll catch you the next time. We are out of time. But good night, guys, and have a great night.
Adios.
Yeah, see you guys. Hey, if you had any questions, just email us or DM us and we'll engage with you.